Hi, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about my memories of Dora Kunz, clairvoyant, dedicated theosophist, and founder of Therapeutic Touch. Dora was born in the Dutch East Indies with the gift of clairvoyance, and her mother was also clairvoyant. The family lived on a sugar plantation owned by her father. When Dora saw a recently deceased person, so did her mother. Dora thought everyone saw what she and her mother saw, so it was not until she was an older child that she found out that very few people were clairvoyant. As some of you know, when Dora was 11 years old, living with her parents in Indonesia, the clairvoyant C.W. Leadbeater wanted to start a training camp in Sydney, Australia, for young, sensitive children. CWL asked Dora's parents if they would allow her to go with him to Australia. Dora's parents told Dora that she should decide whether or not to go, and whatever she decided, they would abide by her decision. Her mother told her to go to the meditation room, think about it, and decide what to do. To their great shock, Dora said she would go. Dora did not speak English, and she was shy, but she said she thought it was the right thing to do. Of course, I did not know Dora then, but she told us about her adventure to Australia. Dora was in Australia during the First World War. Many young Australian men were killed during that war, and the parents of those who were theosophists wrote to Leadbeater to ask him to look up their deceased son and let them know how they were doing. Leadbeater got so many of these requests, he did not have time to answer all of them. Therefore, he gave Dora the task of looking up the deceased men. Dora did that, and typical of Dora, she called the task looking up deaders. When Dora was a young woman, she met and fell in love with Fritz Kuntz, a fellow theosophist. Fritz was an American citizen. So he and Dora came to the United States and got married here. Dora believed she should learn about American history, so she studied it thoroughly. She soon knew more about our history than almost anyone in the country. When C.W. Leadbeater was once in Italy, he saw a form coming out of a Roman Catholic church during Mass. It intrigued him, so he went in and observed what was going on clairvoyantly. As a result of that, he decided to write a book that is called Science of the Sacraments. I highly recommend it. It's a very interesting book. And he enlisted the help of Dora as a very young woman and also several other sensitives. And he would not put anything in the book that all five, I think it was, of the sensitives did not agree to. So they all had to agree to what they saw, and then he would put it in the book. Now, later on, when I knew Dora in New York, the Roman and the Anglo-Catholic churches began to say Mass after noon. Before that, it had not been said before. It had only been said between midnight and noon, not after noon. So our people wanted to know why we shouldn't say it after noon. So the presiding bishop, then, he was a Dutchman, Bishop Vrede, and he wrote to Bishop Pitkin in New York and said, please get a hold of Dora Kunz and ask her to come and observe a private Mass at 5:30 p.m. and ask her what she thinks is going on. So he did that, and he said to her, now remember, Dora was not a Christian. She was born into a theosophical family, and she didn't have any interest in Christianity, although she respected it, as she did all great religions. So she said to her, I want to know if the angel of the Eucharist appears when invoked. I want to know if the 9 orders of angels appear at the preface, and I want to know if the host is consecrated, and I want to know if there's anything disturbing, and I will stop if you tell me there's something disturbing. So he did the whole Mass, and I saw him the next Sunday and asked him about it. And he said Dora was very respectful through the whole Mass. And afterwards, she said, yes, the angel did come. Yes, the 9 orders of angels did appear behind the altar at the preface. Yes, the host was consecrated. However, when the host was broken, Leadbeater said that the energy was spread out over...
Dora said.
Well, Leadbeater said this first.
Okay.
Leadbeater said that the energy was spread out over the whole neighborhood, about a mile radius or so, and that it sort of blessed the neighborhood. And he felt that was the reason the Mass was celebrated. And so Dora said it did not go over the neighborhood. Instead, the energy, when the host was broken, was grounded through the people present like a lightning rod. So in other words, the energy was lost, and that's why Leadbeater thought the Mass should not be said between noon and midnight. Now, in 1927, Dora, Fritz, and others founded the first Theosophical camp in this country. It was on Orcas Island in the Puget Sound near Seattle, Washington. They named it Camp Indralaya, Place of the Gods. The camp is still active and popular. Dora, Fritz, and some others wanted to have a camp on the East Coast, so they began to search for a location. In 1937, Fritz and Dora, along with Emily and John Sellen, found a farm for sale upstate New York. When Dora saw a mountain stream flowing through the property, she said, "This is it." Dora had a strong premonition that they should put a down payment on the property at once. She did not know why, but she trusted her intuition. So they did that, assuring their purchase. The next day, a wealthy gentleman came to purchase the farm. He wanted to fill the stream with trout. He tried his best to offer a great deal of money to the Theosophists to abandon the sale, but they refused. They named the camp Pumpkin Hollow being the village in which it was located. The camp thrives to this day. Dora's cabin at the camp was quite a ways into the woods, away from the other cabins. After an evening program, she would walk home through the woods. Someone asked her if she wasn't frightened walking through the woods in the dark. She responded no, she wasn't afraid at all. And then she explained that during the day, the tree spirits were busy with photosynthesis. But at night, the tree spirit expanded some distance from the tree trunk. She said that is what people felt at night in the woods. They thought someone was there, but it was only the tree spirit. When Mary and I used to go to Pumpkin Hollow, the camp had a set-up weekend in the spring and a put-away weekend in the fall. The weekends were to open or close the camp. One year, John Coates, then international president of the society, was at the setup weekend with me, and I don't remember whether Mary was there or not.
I wasn't.
No, she wasn't there. All of the mattresses had been placed in one cabin in the fall. Rat poison was placed around them because if not, the rats and the mice would destroy the mattresses. Each mattress had a name on it, so that we could identify where the mattress belonged. We were collecting the mattresses, placing them in a truck, and taking them to the appropriate cabins. One mattress had 2 names on it, so we did not know where it belonged. Dora was there with John and me. She cocked her head like a chicken, flopped down on her back on the mattress, jumped up, and said, "Margaret's cabin." Years later, I reminded Dora of that, and she said, "Well, I didn't want to waste time." Her sensitive nature came in handy that day, and because of that, we knew where to put the mattress. Can you get that open? Okay, yeah. Weekends, the trees were, one weekend, hold on here a minute. Oh, I got it. Every summer, Dora would lead a silent retreat weekend at the camp. They were amazing. Participating in those weekends was equivalent to having an internal shower. All the dross was flushed out, and one was left with a profound peace. One of those weekends, the trees were suffering from a disease that killed many of them, At our final meditation that weekend, Dora said, "Let's think of the trees." We did, and after the retreat ended, we asked Dora to say how the trees responded. She said, "Well, to tell you the truth, they were surprised." On another occasion, after a silent retreat, I was riding with Dora and a few others in a car going home. Someone asked Dora if a recently deceased member had attended the meeting. Dora said that she had because she had seen her last week and told her about the retreat. We all laughed, and Dora asked why. I said, "Well, most people don't see dead people on alternate Tuesdays." Years later, Mary and I occasionally went to Indralaya. Weather permitting, Indralaya always had a campfire in the evening, and there would always be some entertainment or a short talk. One day when we were there, Dora said, for the children, at the campfire that evening, she would talk about the fairies. Of course, all the adults attended. She said the West Coast fairies were larger than the East Coast ones, and they lived longer. She said the wild animals could see them, but the domesticated ones had lost that ability. She said that when there was a forest fire, the fairies would lead the animals to safety. Finally, there was an explanation for the amazing ability of animals to flee danger. They followed the fairies. In 1959, when I joined the New York Theosophical Society, we had a dinner before Wednesday member meetings. It began at 5:30 p.m. and cost the astounding amount of $1.50. The meal always consisted of a casserole, a salad, dessert, and a beverage. Dinner was followed by a 20-minute meditation that Dora led, and that was followed by the meeting. Dora Kunz and Emily Sellon, both prominent and dedicated members, lived next to one another in Portchester, a suburb of New York, just north of Manhattan. One week, Dora would prepare the casserole, and the next week, Emily would prepare it. They drove into Manhattan early on Wednesdays, made the salad, and just before 5:30 warmed up the casserole in the Society's kitchen oven. One Wednesday, I was in the kitchen with Dora when the casserole was dropped. She dropped it, upended it on the floor. Dora said quickly, "Shut the door." I did. Dora scooped up the casserole, leaving only a small amount on the floor. No one ever knew we had a casserole from the floor. Before I joined the New York Theosophical Society, I heard that Dora was clairvoyant, a clairvoyant who helped people with their physical and emotional problems. I knew nothing about clairvoyance, but I was fascinated by it and anxious to meet Dora. I met her when I attended my first members' meeting. She was serving the food. Since Dora attended every member meeting, and I did also, I got to know her, and we soon became friends. We were fond of one another, and since we both had a sharp sense of humor, we had many laughs together.
This is Ed on the right, and
Yeah.
to Ed's right is Dora.
And is Mary there somewhere?
No, I'm not. I'm not in. There's another one.
There's another one with her. You won't recognize her. Renee Weber, yeah. Anyway, Dora would sometimes Dora would laugh. It was always a cackle, and when we had no idea what struck her funny. Her laughter was so contagious that soon everyone was laughing. Mary joined the society just before we got married.
This is me.
Yeah, there she is, and there I am.
Ed's on the left, and I'm to Ed's left.
Yeah. It was Dora's influence that actually got Mary to join. I was the manager of the bookshop then, and the bookshop at that point was held in our only one building at the New York Theosophical Society. Mary called me that Wednesday afternoon and said she didn't feel well, so she was going to go home instead of coming to the meeting. Dora was standing there, and she heard my side of the conversation, and she looked at me and said, "Mary doesn't feel well." I said, "No, she doesn't." Dora turned her head to the side, and I knew she was sending Mary healing energy. And then when it came time for the meeting, Mary walked in. I said, I thought you were going home. She said, I was going home, but suddenly I got hot all over, and I thought, oh God, now I'm having a fever. And then I felt really good. I said, Dora thought of you. And that's what she did. Another time, I asked Dora if I could help Mary with the severe menstrual cramps that she frequently got. And instead of telling me anything, she took Mary, sat her down in the chair, worked on Mary's head for about a minute. All of the menstrual cramps went. They were gone totally because Dora worked on Mary's head. So those things really convinced Mary that there was an energy beyond the physical energy that everyone could see, and that prompted her to join. Dora was Miss Malaprop personified. She often mixed metaphors, seldom finished a sentence. Although she had a huge vocabulary and was extremely bright, words were not her strength. She just didn't finish sentences, frequently used the wrong word. Yet somehow she projected her meaning in spite of the incomplete sentences and wrong words. I remember once she made a comical mix of two metaphors, the acid test and the proof is eating the pudding. It came out as, that was the acid pudding. After I'd been a member for some time, Dora asked me to give a talk at a member meeting. I was asked to do it with a more experienced member, Margaret Wagner. Our topic was the path of outgoing and return. When Dora announced our talk, she said, Eddie and Margaret will be talking about the path of outgoing and no return. We roared with laughter, and Dora laughed along with us. Every Wednesday afternoon, Dora would see clients. Dr. Otelia Bankston, a dedicated member, always worked with Dora. If a client needed a prescription, the doctor would write it. Dr. Bankston was a saint. If a client could not pay for a prescription, she would pay for it. The doctor and Dora never took any money for their services. If anyone insisted on paying, Dora would tell them they could make a contribution to the Theosophical Society. I cannot remember why, but after I'd been a member for a few years, I consulted Dora about a problem. Dr. Bankston was with her. I was not nervous about seeing Dora because I thought she must have seen far worse than me, and I knew in spite of my faults I was doing my best. Dora must have been used to people being nervous when she observed them, and must have been surprised that I was not nervous. Several times Dora said, well, he's not nervous. He's not nervous. I only consulted Dora a few times more after that. But each time, Dora proved she had a remarkable ability to see a person's feelings and thoughts, especially habitual ones, or events that had made a deep impression. I had spent 2 years in the Army just before I joined the Society. I despised it. The second time I consulted with Dora, the very first thing she said to me was, your experiences in the Army disgusted you, didn't they? I had not come to her to discuss my experiences in the Army, but she saw the disgust immediately. The last time I consulted Dora, it was at our upstate TS camp, Pumpkin Hollow. Because I had a high PSA count, I was afraid I might have prostate cancer. Dora could always easily spot cancer, so she looked at me on a Sunday afternoon. The very first thing she said to me was, Eddie, you are depressed. You don't want to do anything now, do you? I had not realized I was depressed, but I was, and I did not want to do anything. She told me when I got back to New York I should look at the trees and notice how beautiful they are. I took her advice, and when I came to the NYT on Wednesday, Dora was there. She scrunched up her face, looked to the side a little bit, smiled, and said, Eddie, you look so much better. I told her of course I did, because I had taken her advice. Obviously, I did not look differently physically, but Dora could see my mental, emotional state and noticed it was much better. Since I am fluent in Spanish, Dora would sometimes ask me to interpret for an Hispanic client who did not speak English. I remember once interpreting for a client who did not speak or understand English. Dora said to me, "Ask her what's wrong." I did, and she replied she was worried about her heart and that she had a frightening dream that she thought embodied some evil psychic influence. Dora got quiet, turned her head to the side, as she always did when viewing clairvoyantly, and said, "There's nothing wrong with her heart, but she needs a diuretic. Ask her if she's taking one." I did. At first she said no, so Dr. Bankston wrote a prescription for one. Later she said she was, so the doctor trashed the prescription. Then Dora said, "She is constipated, but her intestines are irritated." So she asked the doctor to prescribe a mild laxative. I then told the woman there was nothing wrong with her heart. The dream was simply a nightmare and not dangerous. Dora and the doctor got up to leave. And then the woman jumped up and said, "I forgot to tell her, I am constipated." I replied, "We already know that." She had come in to ask her about her heart in a dream, and Dora told her she needed a laxative. I had a good laugh about that. On another occasion, Dora asked me for a client who I discovered did not need an interpreter. Her hand was gnarled with severe rheumatoid arthritis. At the time, I was manager of the Quest bookshop at the Society. Dora was staying in the TS guest room, and in the morning she bought a Chinese coin from me in the bookshop, a coin that we sold for use with the I Ching. I did not know why she wanted it. Dora was always honest with her clients. When she met the woman, she told her she could not cure the arthritis. Then she took the coin she had purchased and gave it to the woman. Dora said, "When it hurts badly, put this in your hand. It will relieve some of the pain." Dora had magnetized the coin with healing energy. The woman got up to leave, got a few steps toward the door, and Dora handed me money to cover taxi fare and said, "Give this to her. She should not walk, she should take a taxi home." When I gave the money to the woman, she teared up and said, "I've heard of people like her. I never thought I would meet one." Dora had a heart of gold. Early in the 1960s, Dora and Fritz went to India. When they returned, they gave a small gift to several close friends. I was one of them. Dora gave me a ring that was adjustable. It happens to be a symbol of Capricorn. I'm a Scorpio. Dora had no idea what I was, and she didn't care. So the adjustable ring would fit anyone. When she gave it to me, I thought, I'll have Bishop Pitkin bless it for me. I was not yet a priest. As soon as I thought that, Dora read my mind and said, "Would you like me to magnetize it for you?" Of course I said I did. So she took it and returned it to me the next week, fully charged. I've worn that ring ever since. Similar to HPB, Dora had a difficult personality. She could send people crying from a room. Yet she was a spiritual giant. When she spoke of the masters, you felt you were in their presence. Dora was compassionate, but she did not pity people. She saw hundreds of clients, some of whom had endured terrible tragedy or were seriously ill. She would do whatever she could for them, but when she could do no more, she would wish them well, leave, and happily join her friends. In the 1960s, Dora learned of an amazing healer who lived in Canada. She contacted him and invited him to Pumpkin Hollow. His name was Oscar Estebani, and he had been an officer in the Hungarian cavalry. He told Dora he discovered his healing ability when his horse hurt its leg and it would probably have to be put down. Estebani felt compassion for the horse. He put his hands on the horse's legs. Suddenly he felt an enormous energy flowing through his hands and into the horse. In the morning, the horse was so well it was able to go on as usual. Estebani tried to teach his men to heal that way, but the men were not able to do it. So Estebani decided that healing could not be taught. Dora observed Estebani heal, and she said she had never seen such a powerful healer. Being a strong-minded woman, Dora decided that despite Estebani's point of view, healing could be taught. So she began to experiment with participants at Pumpkin Hollow and later at the NYTS. Dolores Krieger, who had a PhD in nursing, worked with Dora and gave the methodology the name of therapeutic touch, often called TT. Dolores got TT into the nursing school at NYU, and eventually it got into many nursing schools both in and out of the United States. When Mary was recovering from throat cancer that she got, never having smoked or drank, by the way, we met no less than 3 nurses at NYU Hospital who had taken therapeutic touch courses, one of them at least getting credit for the course because it was taught by PhD Dolores Krieger. Dora had a highly developed clairvoyant ability. She was able to see the energy pattern of internal organs. She didn't see the physical organ, she saw the energy pattern of the organ. And she learned to determine if an organ was diseased. Doctors who knew Dora would sometimes send her a patient they had been unable to diagnose. Dora would observe that person, tell the doctor where the problem was. The doctor would take the appropriate diagnostic test that proved Dora had been correct. In the early 1970s, Dora became the subject of a study by a neuropsychologist, Dr. Shafika Karagula. I met her, knew her briefly. I can't say she was a close friend, but I certainly did know her. Dr. Karagula had been given a grant to study clairvoyance. The doctor got Dora into Sloan Kettering Cancer Clinic to observe patients. She would bring a patient out, place the patient in front of Dora with her back to Dora, and say, "What is wrong with her?" Once, Dora said she had never seen anything like this before. Dr. Karagula had a wonderful scientific mind. She wasn't going to take that and without a question. So the doctor said to Dora, "Tell me exactly what you see." Dora said there is a place in the patient's brain where there is no energy at all. The doctor asked Dora to point out exactly where that was on the patient's head. When she did, the doctor looked at the patient's chart and discovered that portion of the brain had been excised. Dora later on said to us at the meditation class, she said, "I don't think Dr. Karagula ever got over clairvoyance." Like all groups, the NYTS had its share of difficult people. One in particular, Lillian, was especially difficult. No matter what anyone said at a meeting, she would say, "You say, but Theosophy clearly teaches." She thought she alone knew the teachings of Theosophy. Everyone else was wrong. At one member meeting, Lillian was at it again, and the tensions in the room built to a maximum. Dora was upstairs in our library, and at the most tense point, she came down, looked into the room, and diffused the situation. Later, I asked Dora why she came down at the moment we needed her. She replied, "Well, I was sitting in the library, and a lot of prickly stuff kept coming up through the floor, and I thought, is that a theosophical meeting going on down there?" Dora asked Emily Sellen and me to talk with Lillian about the problem. We did, and told her it was all right to disagree with everyone, but she should not imply that she alone knew Theosophy. It seemed to work for a while, but finally it got so bad that member meetings went from about 20 to about 3 or 4. We went to our bylaws to find out what we could do about such a member, and discovered if 3 members wrote a letter of complaint, we could call the difficult member before the board and put that member on probation. We did that, and in the middle of our interview, Lillian jumped up and said, "None of you are Theosophists," and she left, never to be seen again. Dora was president of the NYTS when she was elected national president. She asked me to finish her term, and I did. Later, I was elected president on my own. It was necessary for the national president to live at the headquarters in Wheaton, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago, so Dora moved there. While I was still manager of the Quest Bookshop in New York, Dora called me one day to ask me to speak at the National Convention in July. She said I would share the program with a wonderful woman who was in the CIA. After praising the woman, Dora asked me if I would do it. She was obviously shocked when I said no. I said, Dora, I could never speak with someone from the CIA. She then burst into laughter. She had meant the CIIS, the California Institute of Integral Studies. I accepted and gave my first national talk that July. In 1981, Mary's father died. I knew that for TS members, Dora would check on recently deceased loved ones. So I encouraged Mary to contact Dora. She did. Dora asked Mary to send her a picture of her father and that she would talk to Mary about him at the next TS convention, which we were to attend. When Dora spoke to us about Mary's father, it was as though she knew him all her life, when she had only met him in a reception line at our wedding. The first thing she said was, he knows I'm your friend and that I'll talk to you about him. And then she said, I've never seen a man so tired in my life. Mary's father was tired for many months before he died. Dora said someone close to him, also dead, was with him and kept saying, you don't have to feel tired anymore. It must have been his brother, recently deceased. Then Dora told us things about the family. She said, your father says, but I think. We laughed. That was exactly what her father believed, but Dora was right. After listening to Dora, I said to Mary, if I ever had any doubts about life beyond death, it's gone now. One of our members, Anna Lemkoff, was devastated when her Canadian brother committed suicide. She contacted Dora. Afterward, Anna told me she was amazed Dora was able to tell her about her brother's family and friends in Canada, even though she knew nothing about them and had never met them until she looked up Dora's brother. The last time I heard Dora give a talk, it was at her home, the home of a member in New Jersey. I thought I had heard it all before, but I always enjoyed listening to Dora. So Mary and I went to the talk. It was on life after death. To my surprise, Dora said something I had not heard before. She said that just before reincarnation, the inner self has a limited choice in how much of its karma it was willing to work out. Then she was asked if she thought the masters were still interested in the TS. She said if we were doing what they wanted, they were. If not, they would not be interested. After Dora finished her term as national president, she moved to Seattle, Washington, to live in a granny apartment her son Johnny had built for her in his home. Dora had such a difficult personality that it drove Johnny's wife, Ino, nearly mad. It got so bad that Ino said Dora had to leave. Fortunately, Dora had a brother who lived nearby, and she moved in with him. When Dora realized she was near death, she refused all food and drink. She died at age 95 on August 5th, 1999. We miss her wonderful laugh, her amazing clairvoyant help. We hope to work with her again in a future incarnation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed, for sharing with us your experiences with Dora. Could you please, Mary, unshare the PowerPoint presentation?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And then we are opening now for questions and comments. Well, I have a question, Ed. What do you think that Dora would, what do you think, what advice would Dora give for us today in relation to the pandemics?
Well, I don't know as I could answer that, but I'm sure she would treat anyone who came to her for help if they were positive or afraid of it. she always wanted us to think in a positive way. She warned about being depressed because it affected the neighborhood. In fact, she did say that we are affected by the atmosphere around us. For example, she once mentioned that if the United Nations were would be hosting someone like Fidel Castro, who was, of course, the enemy of many Cubans in New York, she said that energy would hit you, and you would feel it was coming from you, but it was really coming from the outside. So I'm sure she would have told us that about the pandemic, that if we were feeling down, it was because so many people were feeling down and we were picking it up. And she would want us to fight against that and to send positive energy out.
Thank you.
If anyone has additional information, incidents with Dora, they can share them.
Yes, and then if you would like to say something, please, you can just raise your hand or write something on the chat.
Can I ask a question, please? That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for your talk. I mean, really, really fascinating. And I hadn't actually expected you to talk so much about Dora's healing. And I'm wondering whether, how unique she was in the American section. I mean, she was obviously a great healer, but were there other healers, mentioned some, but were there others working around her who were doing similar healing work?
I didn't get that.
Were there other healers, like her brother was working?
Well, Dora did have a brother. Well, she had a couple of brothers, but Harry was also sensitive, and he would diagnose people, and he had all kinds of homeopathic remedies he would send. And he also was a chiropractor, and Dora used to say he was the best back cracker in the world. I went to him once, and he did help me. But in any case, he was sensitive. And Dora's son, Johnny, was not clairvoyant, but he told me that I worked with Johnny for some years, and he told me that in a college class, a professor, I guess physics professor, showed a spectrum of light, and the professor said some people can see beyond this, and most people saw to a certain level.
Beyond
Johnny could see, beyond most people could see beyond.
Beyond the infrared and ultraviolet. So
beyond the infrared.
He was able to see beyond the infrared and beyond the ultraviolet.
Yeah, Johnny could see more, so he had a touch of that ability, but he wasn't clairvoyant.
Also, Dora obviously trained a lot of TT practitioners.
Yeah, she trained a lot of nurses.
She restricted the Pumpkin Hollow TT sessions to people in the medical profession, doctors and nurses and other practitioners.
She felt they could help more people than individuals like us. So she gave preference to them in the classes.
But we were both in her TT classes in New York City.
Mary, we cannot see you. Could you? Yeah.
I tried to have Ed be on the spotlight. Sorry. Hi.
Oh, when Dora started to teach Therapeutic Touch, she did it first at Pumpkin Hollow. Then she selected a group of people from the New York Theosophical Society to experiment with it on alternate Saturday mornings, and Mary and I were among them. And I remember that what Dora would do, she'd bring someone in that no one knew. And I remember that one woman came in. She looked perfectly normal. She didn't look ill. She didn't wear glasses. She looked like she could see just fine. And Dora would put that person in the middle of the room, and she'd ask each of us in turn to go up, put our hands near the person's head, and bring our hands all the way down to the feet, and note if we felt anything different. Well, I did. I felt something around her eyes, and I thought surely I was wrong. People don't get sick in their eyes, especially when you can see that they can see perfectly well. So afterward, Dora would go around and say, what did you feel, if anything, to each person? And when she came to me, I said I felt something around her eyes, being certain I was wrong. When everyone had a chance, Dora said she has glaucoma. So I knew then that I could feel something in my hands. And then she would put the patient in the middle of the room, blindfold her, so that she wouldn't have a preconceived idea about who could help and who couldn't. And she would have us go up in pairs, one on the front, one on the back, and try to send healing energy into the person. Well, that time, I felt a tremendous amount of energy going through my hands like a sun lamp at a certain point on that person's back. And then Dora would ask the patient, what did you feel, if anything? And when she said the group that I was in, she said, I felt energy going in right here. She pointed to the exact place where I felt the energy. So that was when I realized I could do it. I was sure Dora could. I didn't know whether I could, but I had an open mind.
Thank you. Ifigenia, she wants to ask a question. And Gamalia is saying, thank you, Ed and Mary, for the interesting talk. I especially enjoyed hearing about therapeutic touch. So nice to see you both. Ify, now please, you can ask.
Hello, Ed and Mary. Thank you very much for all this information you shared with us. I'm very intrigued to find out about Dora, especially her relationship with her relation with the spirits and the elementals you were talking about. Another time you mentioned Dora. It's amazing that there are still some people like Dora in this world, which is so overcome by materialism. And I think that you were very fortunate to meet a person like hers. I wish I could meet a similar person. Where can one find one? So thank you very much for everything you shared with us. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I feel that knowing Dora Kunz and Fritz Kunz were a blessing in my life, because I learned meditation from Dora, the pearl of great price, and I learned theosophical metaphysics from Fritz. Without Fritz, I don't think I could have written The Secret Gateway, and without Dora, I don't know as I would ever have learned to meditate profoundly.
Dora wrote a book called The Real World of the Fairies, which you might find fascinating.
Yeah, she didn't actually do the writing. She wasn't, as I said before, words were not her strength, but everything in it she approved of. And I think she may have mentioned in that book, she saw a fairy in Central Park, and she told him he was going to be in the newspaper. And he didn't care about that at all.
Talk about the spirit of New York.
Oh yes, I did want to say that. Dora could observe the angelic kingdom from the time she was a child. And she said there were various types of angels. Only one type dealt with human beings. Others dealt mainly with nature. And she said that that each place has a kind of a brooding angel over it. And New York has an angel that is, consciousness is centered over Grand Central Station, which is just a few blocks from us. And she said the angel's chief characteristic, Angel of New York's chief characteristic, is not love, it is power. And I tell you, even if you know nothing of Theosophy and you don't believe in angels, when you approach Manhattan, you feel that power. It's absolutely you can actually feel the power and the energy of New York City, and it's coming from the Angel of New York. Now, she said the Angel of New York is very busy with everyday, moment-to-moment problems. So if there's people who are meditating, praying, the angel absorbs that energy and holds it. And then when the city needs it, like if there's a riot or something, it sends that energy to that area to help keep it down, you see. And then somebody asked her, is there an angel of the country? And she said, yes, but that angel is more like the great redwoods in the Northwest. It's very steady. It sees a long-range view of the destiny of the nation. I asked Dora once if the Angel of New York could move out of New York at all, and she said, no, it could not. It was an earth angel.
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
And if I may say,
Just a minute, Ify, please, because okay, there are two persons. Please go on, Ify.
I don't know about the angel that Dora spoke for New York, for Manhattan, but I'm telling you that power of Central Park is overwhelming. You can feel it to your bone. And the same happens in very high mountains. I don't know if you have been to one, but you feel a tremendous power over you. And I suppose it must be the spirit of the mountain, according to Dora. What do you think?
Yes, I'm sure it is. She said once that she never felt lonely when she traveled, and she traveled a lot. She said, as soon as I get to a place, I get in touch with the angel of the place. And then she felt comfortable and she felt she had a friend.
Thank you. Sheila, you have the word now, please.
Mute. Yes, I was very fortunate to know both Harry and Dora at Camp Indralaya. Harry was one of the most influential people in my life, actually. The first talk I ever heard him give was, "Don't believe, you have to know." And I carry that to this day. But Dora, she always said about Indralaya that there was a special feeling there. There were a lot of devas, a lot of nature sprites, and she used to contact the deva on Mount Constitution, which is on Orcas Island. Mm-hmm. And she always, just before she died, she said, "Camp is going to be fine. Everything is in order for it to continue." And she always made the point that there was a very special feeling at Indralaya, and there certainly was. But I wonder if you can answer a question I have. Dora taught us to do therapeutic touch long before she ever got involved with the medical group, although Eric Pepper used to be there too. And she would have we would be sitting in a circle in the lounge, and she would have somebody who needed treatment in the center of the circle. And then she would call upon two people, one on either side, to help this person. And sometimes we would be mortified because she would say, "You come." "Oh, no, not you. You can't do it."
That was Dora.
That was Dora.
Yeah, it was mortifying, really. And Dora was quite curt in many ways, but I'm told that when she was healing, she was very, very sensitive.
Yeah.
Have you anything to say about that?
Yeah. Yes, she was. I don't know. I was going to say something, but it's gone.
She was very sensitive to the people that she was treating. It was very clear. And she made a special point when the AIDS epidemic first came out. She worked with a lot of the AIDS patients and was very sensitive to their situation.
And if she couldn't cure them, which she couldn't, she would help them to accept death and die peacefully. Yeah.
We had somebody on Orcas Island, I think she was a Quaker, and she had an incurable cancer. And Dora used to work on bringing her to an acceptance.
Yeah.
We often practice that with people too. Yeah.
Dora would do what she could for somebody. She had compassion, but not pity, as I said. You know, she could, when she couldn't help somebody, she would say so. I once asked her if she could help a friend of mine, and straight away she said, "I can't help her." And that was it.
Thank you. Emilce, sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses. Emilce from Argentina. She has a question. Hi.
Yes, my English is not so good, but I want to say thank you to Mary and Ed. And I heard you speak, Ed, you speak Spanish. Would you give this conference Spanish for people who speak, who don't speak English. I don't know if it's
Ed,
if you
Ed,
understood
Ed,
my.
he's
Ed
asking
has,
you.
Ed has given presentations in Spanish.
Yeah, I think maybe I could send you I have written this talk out. I could send it to you. Maybe you could translate it. It's much better for a native speaker to do the translating into their own language. I would be better maybe translating from Spanish to English, and you would be better translating from English to Spanish. So if you want, send me your email address, and I will send you a copy of the talk. Anyone else who wants it, just let me know, and I'll send it. So it's written out.
Yeah. Okay. It's a remarkable life about Dora Kunz's life. So it's very interesting, and thank you for your talk,
Yeah.
for sharing.
Yeah, and you saw Mary put up the book, A Most Unusual Life. That is her biography, and I vetted it and corrected a few glaring errors and added a little bit and wrote an endorsement for the book. So I highly recommend that. Of course, I didn't know Dora until 1959, when she was probably in her 50s. But so I couldn't say anything about the early life, but I knew her fairly well from then on.
I do have a question. Ed, did Dora share with you anything about Leadbeater, the time that she was trained with him, the
Yes.
type of training she had?
She didn't talk about the training, but she said a couple of things. One was she did not think that Leadbeater molested boys because none of them turned out to be homosexual, she said. So she didn't think that he did that. She didn't say whether he was gay or not, so I rather suspect he may have been, but I don't think he molested boys either. He was charged with teaching masturbation. That was the charge against him. And of course, then it was considered an absolute horror. And now psychologists understand. Well, Dora once said about masturbation, it's part of growing up. So she accepted it as a normal thing growing up. What else was it?
We'll talk
No,
about
what I meant, yeah, I didn't meant the problems related to Leadbeater, but the actual training he gave to her. If she
Yeah.
shared anything about the training process, how he was training them. I mean, in terms of techniques and all that, apart from the controversial
Yeah.
aspect that you mentioned, but did she share anything else with you about
She
that?
never, in my hearing, she never talked about any kind of training. I suppose she would have thought it was rather useless because we wouldn't have understood what was going on, not being clairvoyant. So she didn't. She did, however, she was always prompt. And she said that she learned to be prompt once when she was with Leadbeater in Australia. She was coming to the meditation and she was about a minute late. And Leadbeater saw her coming across the lawn to the meditation, and he shut the door in her face. She was not going to be permitted if she was late. So she learned to be on time.
Talk about the cat. Talk about
the cat. Leadbeater had a cat, and he wanted Dora to wash the cat. Well, Dora respected animals, and she would never harm them, but she wasn't. I mean, she didn't particularly like to have animals around her. Maybe it was the animalistic vibrations, I don't know. But she had to wash the cat, and cats do not like to be washed.
Dora also did not like to be hugged, but later in her later life, especially after she became the president of the Theosophical Society in America, she sort of began to tolerate it. And so after that, I had no trouble hugging her.
Yeah, she didn't like to be hugged, but I think she felt as national president, she had to be able to hug people or they would have felt she was too cold or something. So she did learn to hug people.
That's interesting. James has a question, but before that, there are many requests for you to share the PowerPoint presentation. So perhaps you could send it to me And I would send a link to the newsletter, so into the newsletter of the school,
Okay.
or uh, the interested parts to download it.
Okay.
And James, please, you have the word.
Sure. Hi, Ed. You mentioned that Dora said that angels on the West Coast tend to last longer. I was wondering if she ever said what happened to them afterward.
She didn't say angels. She talked about the nature spirits called fairies sometimes. She also said that more people believed in fairies than believed in angels, even though the great religions only talk about angels, never about fairies. And she said the reason is that the fairies are they manifest a little closer to the physical level, so that if you have just the beginnings of clairvoyance, you can sort of see them out of the corner of your eye. So she thought that that's why more people believed there were nature spirits or fairies than believed in angels, because they could see them more easily.
He wants to know what
And
happens after they.
I don't know what happens after they die. You know, I was going to ask Dora that. There's so many questions I had for her, but she's gone now. I can't ask. She would have been an enormous help writing my 2 books, but I had to do it on my own and just take what I knew about her. So she never talked about what happened to an angel after they die, but she did say, when somebody asked her, do angels have a sense of humor? And she said, yes, they do. She also said that a sense of humor was the second most important thing for the spiritual life. So she was asked, what is the most important thing? And she said, common sense. The next thing was a sense of humor. And that makes sense because humor is based on what is incongruent. And you only can know what's incongruent if you know what is congruent. So a sense of humor was very important. And then they said, what's the third thing? She said, more common sense.
Well, Sheila, she wrote that Dora described fairies as vibrations of light.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Emercy from Argentina, please send us your email, then we can pass it on to Ed. Okay?
I upload it in.
If you write
the
on
chat.
the chat, we'll be lost. You have to send it to us at the European School, then we will forward your email
Okay.
to Ed.
Okay.
Okay? Or Ed could write down his
Okay, I
email.
will
Mary,
send to
yeah,
you.
yeah. Any other question or comment? Please do not raise your hand like this.
Yes, this is Mel.
Mel, hi Mel, please.
Hi. Ed, thank you so much for sharing that wonderful friendship with Dora. I was wondering, did she ever mention her ability to be able to perceive other people's thoughts? Did that affect her or get in the way or maybe contribute to her unique personality sometimes? I mean, it's kind of like that movie, The Sixth Sense, you know, where you got people showing up. Did she have that?
She was once asked if she was always seeing things clairvoyantly, and she said no, but it was always like in her peripheral vision. And she said when people ask to be clairvoyant, they don't know what they're asking for because you see all the terrible things as well as all the beautiful things. Once up at Pumpkin Hollow, when her mother was there, as I said, she was clairvoyant also, there was a man there who apparently was rather unsavory. And the mother said to Dora, don't you see his aura? And Dora said, yes, but what am I going to do about it? So she could see it, and she could see the terrible things as well. But she was an extraordinarily gifted clairvoyant. And you know, I think you may remember that the KH said that in order to be his student, that is his chela, one directly connected to him, one had to first be clairvoyant. And I think that's one of the reasons they picked Blavatsky. And I think Dora was just as good at clairvoyance as Blavatsky was. So I do think that Dora, I'm quite sure she saw and worked with KH and Moria. And I think she was their chela because of several things that she did and said that made me realize that she was such a chela.
All right, Konstantin, would you like to comment, please? You wrote something. Yeah.
Yes, I wrote the main point. It was one story enough. The one a nature spirit asked her to move him into other place because his place was flooded by the water, and he was located a stone. She explained to me it's like home for him, and we relocated the stone into another forest. And when we were walking through the forest, she said that um, before she just felt that spirit in the stone, but now she said that he enabled her to see many other spirits in that forest, and she told me what she watched now.
Hi,
And
Konstantin. Just a question. Who told you?
it's one woman which worked in the library, and
Uh,
she might helped us much to organize our philosophical meetings. She never was a member of the Philosophical Society, yet she was very sensitive. Yet she wasn't the clairvoyant by nature, yet she could feel influences and spirits. And so one of spirit spirits enabled her for time
yeah.
to see other spirits. It's a light practice among the witches, which can't be um, clairvoyant by their own devices, yet
Yeah.
using the connection with some spirit, she could see other ones.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Well, Konstantin said that he met someone who is very sensitive, but wasn't clairvoyant. But with the help of a spirit of nature, she could see other spirits of nature. This is basically his comment. Do you have anything to say about it, Eddie?
Well, as I said, Dora was a very gifted clairvoyant. She could see whatever was there. Once I remember Mary and I had been in the, what was that place? Not the Painted Desert, the other place that was so barren. Anyway, Badlands, in the Badlands. Yeah.
Then the Southwest.
Yeah, and in our Southwest, Badlands, where there's
deserts and petrified forests. And
yeah, we walked through there, and it did not feel threatening, but it felt completely alien. It wasn't like feeling trees around you. It just was like being on the moon. Not threatening, but very alien. I mentioned it to Dora, and she said, some of the strangest elementals I ever saw in my life were in the Badlands.
Thank you, Ed. We have a lot of comments on the chat. Almost everyone wrote expressing their gratitude for you sharing your experiences with Dora. We are very grateful for being here with you and having learned so much about this wonderful theosophist that she was, learning about a wonderful theosophist from a wonderful theosophist, from two wonderful theosophists. So it's like a chain. So thank you so much, Ed and Mary,
Sure.
for sharing your experiences and your time with us. If we don't, I don't see any other question, so we are closing our session today. Next Sunday, we have our Sunday lecture also, and we will be together again. Would you like to say something, Ed and Mary, before leaving?
Erika, I think Dino wants to speak.
Yeah.
Dino, where is Dino? Yeah, Dino, please, if you want to say something. You have to unmute yourself, please. All right, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Ed. You remember me? We met at Salzburg at Dr.
yeah.
Beard Hotel.
Salzburg. We met in Salzburg.
Oh,
That
yes.
was a few years back.
I remember your wife, Mary. He was so good. You know, while you speaking, put your speech on the screen straight away. Fantastic. Very, very
Being
good.
what?
I put your speech on the screen right away.
Oh, yeah. You know, the curious thing is, the very first trip I took out of this country was to a World Congress of the Theosophical Society in Salzburg. It was my first trip to Europe. And my last trip out of the country was also to Salzburg. But this last time, I was a speaker, not just in the audience. And in Salzburg, the first time at the World Congress, we met Clara Codd, and the Salzburg is not a very big city, as many of you know, and we had 2,000 members of the society there.
Wow.
The Lord Mayor was so grateful for all the tourist money. He gave us a free concert in the Mozarteum. We filled the Mozarteum for a concert.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Anyway, another thing that I would like to say, at the Blavatsky Lodge, maybe you know about Erika Lauber, and she was talking quite a lot about Dora Kunz. And another thing I would say, do the pumping olive farms still going? And do they still do meditation and healing and seeing fairies?
The Pumpkin Hollow Farm is still going. It has a little bit of trouble with ticks and Lyme disease, but yes, it is definitely still going. We keep in contact with them. The waterfall is still there in all of its glory. The deer are still there. The fairies are still there. One of the slides had a picture of a meditation house that was built up on the hill on the other side of the stream. And so if the weather is not good, people meditate in the meditation room. Otherwise, there's like a little apple orchard right outside the main house where people would sit on the ground or on chairs and meditate. So meditation regularly goes on. Carolyn still leads, still runs the farm right now, and she does quiet, silent meditations. So there are still some silent meditations going on. Ed is unable to traverse the rough terrain, so he wouldn't be able to go up there and stay because it's gravel roads, it's bumpy, there's a lot of tree roots. It's not set for people who are handicapped, unfortunately. But it is a beautiful, beautiful place, and the
very
stream
nice
has
place.
so much energy. You just go and you just feel, just sitting by the stream and meditating is just wonderful.
There's a place just away from that meditation house up in the woods area where we bury cremated remains. And I have officiated over several, and of course Dora has too. And I remember once one of our members who had died had been cremated, and he wanted his ashes buried there. And I saw Dora getting out of the car with this box that looked like a box that contained cremated remains. And I said, "Dora, is that the cremated remains?" And she laughed hysterically, and she said, "No, it's the cottage cheese." And one time we were burying a member, a very dedicated member, and a little dog ran up and sat there right by the place we dug for the cremated remains. And when we finished, Dora said, Vigo was the man's name. She said Vigo was very pleased that his dog came.
And the dog came and just immediately
Sat right there.
at the beginning came and sat there and waited until the entire service was over, ceremony was over, and then left. The dog knew. It really knew. And it was very, very beautiful to see.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
another thing, and Dora's next door neighbor, Emily Sellon, had dogs. And they used to come over to Dora, and she'd throw a stone. And she said, every time they come over, I see in their aura a picture of a stone. They wanted her to throw a stone.
Your humor is always good, Teddy.
Oh, talk about the guy with the trees in his aura.
Oh, yes. You may want to look at her book. I think it's called A Personal Aura. Many, many years ago, Dora had an artist draw two-dimensional pictures of auras that she had examined. And she used to always say, when she talked about those pictures and showed the slides, that remember, this is a two-dimensional image that is static. The aura is changing constantly. Every second it is changing, because your aura is your feelings and your thoughts. That's what your aura is, the energy of them. And she said once, by the way, it was Franklin Roosevelt's vice president, one of them, I think, can't remember his name now.
Blanket on it.
I can't remember the name. Anyway, he was a member of the Theosophical Society. And she knew him, and she saw his aura, and she said to him, I do not know what it means, but around your midriff, which is where the everyday thoughts seem to locate, I see a lot of trees. He laughed and he said, oh, Dora, every night before I go to bed, I think of the trees. It makes me feel peaceful. So she saw those trees.
Oh, she talked about things in the aura, like whirligigs. If it was something that you were actively focused on, they would be high up in your aura. But as you began to let go of things, they would move down to your feet.
No, it was the reverse.
Oh.
If you
I got it reversed.
it was the reverse. If you learned something from your traumatic experience, it would be visible, the little whirligig would be visible in your aura, in the upper aura. When you really were finished with it and you could think of it without any pain whatsoever, the little whirligig was gone, completely gone, never there anymore.
wow.
She called them whirligigs.
Yeah.
Little whirling,
Spinning.
like vortexes.
Vortexes, yeah, of energy. Ed and Mary, I also met you in Salzburg,
Yes,
Austria.
we did. We met you
The
there.
first time we met in Salzburg. And actually, Mary, I watched you presented a wonderful lecture there on Theosophy and comics. Remember?
Yeah.
I still have that. I have a lot of versions. Theosophy in the comic strips.
We should organize one lecture also on this. It would be
okay.
wonderful. It was a wonderful lecture. So if you have
Yeah.
it ready, I will contact you so we can close date for you to present on the. Do you accept the invitation?
I accept the invitation.
All right, that's fantastic. So thank you so much. We are closing then our meeting today.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ed
Ed.
and Mary, so much. It was a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you, all of you. I'll see you again Sunday. All right. So I wish you
Sunday.
a nice.
Hi, everybody.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.